So let's hop right in. Cachi Velez. Yeah, let me tell you, there are very few people that I can think about who I can really mark the time of my own career as an engineer because when I first started getting serious about being a sound engineer, being a musician myself, man, your band was the first really large band that I did.
Oh, gee, thanks.
Yeah, man, but it was crazy because you guys were stretching my equipment at the time. I was like, man, I don't think I have enough mics to do all of this, this,
Yeah,
but
we're a big band. We're 13 pieces, so that's
yeah.
that's that's a lot of heads.
Yeah,
A lot of
but
microphones too.
a lot of microphones. But when I first heard you guys play, it's like you guys are so tight, so much energy, and I just loved your engaging style. So, hey, can you tell our audience like how would you describe your music, your style?
Um, okay, so first of all, thank you for having me on the on your podcast. I truly do appreciate that. I'm blessed. So thank you so much. Um, Describing my style of music. So in the Latin genre or in salsa, you have salsa, right?
Mhm.
And then they have what's called salsa dura, and
Mhm.
then you have salsa romantica. Some
Mhm.
people call it salsa monga, soft salsa, so to speak, or very relaxed style of romantic style of salsa. And then you have salsa dura, which is that hard punch you in the face, feel it in your soul, make you wanna, really get grooving and so on and so forth. That's the style of salsa that I like to play, which is salsa dura. Um, a lot of that salsa dura is some of the old school stuff, or
Mhm.
the older genre of salsa, or the older style of salsa, I should say. Um, and so that is the style of salsa that I like to play. Not that I won't play salsa romantica, because I have, and I,
Mhm.
I will continue to do so. Um, but I kind of gravitate more towards the salsa dura, that heavy, hard hitting,
Right.
hardcore like salsa feel. That's me. Now on the Latin jazz side, because you've seen me play both
Yeah.
salsa and Latin jazz, um, I try to incorporate that feel.
Mm.
There is Latin jazz that's very mellow, very smooth, and that's great. And don't get me wrong, I've done that as well. Um, but I try to incorporate that salsa swing, that salsa dura feel into the Latin jazz.
Interesting.
That's and so that's how I like to. That's the style of salsa that I like to play.
You,
That's it.
you, that's actually quite interesting because I was like, man, I really love your music and I really love your style. And, I've always been attracted to artists who really try and merge two styles
Right.
because you can identify, let's say like an old school genre over here and then one over here, but I think that you get such a rich tapestry of innovative sounds when you are trying to merge those two styles. And honestly, this is the first time that it's like makes sense now. After all these years, I'm just like, man, there's just something different about, the way that you guys approach your music. And I mean, you just explained it for me. So my head's like blown right now. Okay.
That's it. That is it. That there's no secret sauce really. That's just I try to incorporate my style of who I am as a musician, as an artist, with that old school style of salsa, especially when I'm doing Latin jazz. I
Yeah.
like my Latin jazz to be hard, dirty, just.
Yeah.
Even my latest single, the one that's out, Déjala que baile sola. If you listen to that, when right before we started trying to create the song, or in this case, Chino Nunez,
Mhm.
um, I was like, I want it to be hard.
Mhm.
I just wanted to be hit you in the face. And then he did an amazing arrangement, and that's what's out there now. And it's that hard style of salsa, but it fits me so well because that's what I like to do. That's that style of salsa that I love to do.
You know, we were having a conversation the other day just about Latin jazz and why you enjoy Latin jazz, and I think one of the things that we talked about was it allows for a level of freedom of expression. Can you talk about that? And I in Latin, the salsa side, it follows a particular format, but that Latin jazz, it allows for a level of freedom and improvisation. Talk about that. Why you like that?
So, okay, so yeah, we did have that conversation the other day, and I
Uh,
remember it clearly. Yeah, it was like 2, 3 days ago.
yeah.
And so yeah, so when you have salsa, you have a chart. It's written ABPA or whatever the format is. Excuse me. Um, and you kind of follow that, from beginning to end. And you can have some variations in between, and you can, throw some changes here and there, so on and so forth. And for the most part, the musicians are playing what either they're reading or what they're trained and taught to play. And again, you have variations in there. You have changes in there to make the song kind of feel different and your own when you're playing that salsa. However, for me on the Latin jazz side, you have the format in the beginning of the song that that structure, and you play that structure and everybody says, oh yeah, I know this song because that's part of the structure, that's part of the form. um, and then you have that same structure kind of coming out of the song.
Mhm.
But everything in between, everything in the middle of the song is all improvisation. Do
Mhm.
whatever you want, do play whatever you want, make it sound however you want. um we can make the song last 3 minutes like we can make the song last 13 minutes.
Yeah.
There is just no there's no limitations with there when we're playing Latin jazz. At least for me, the way I feel it, there's no limitations when you're there and you're in that section and those guys are soloing. You give them the liberty to do whatever it is that they want, however they want.
Yeah.
Just as know that when you give that cue, everybody knows where they got to be to come
Mhm.
out. And then all of a sudden you're back to the form, and then you're heading, you're giving the cue, hey, and that means everybody's going back to the coda, and everybody's heading, you know, out the song. Everybody's going to the end of the song,
Yeah.
and everybody knows where they're supposed to be. But in the middle, mm, it's have fun. All the time you spend practicing on your solos
Mhm.
and oh, I want to try this out or whatever the case may be. A lot of times you get to do that when you do Latin jazz, at least the way I like to do Latin jazz.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so that is kind of the difference there that we had that conversation the other day.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that I really enjoy. It's like musical acrobatics. It's like you're gonna get off the trampoline, you're flying in the air, you're doing all of that stuff, but you got to make sure you land in the right
Yeah,
spot.
yeah, for sure. For sure. You got to make sure you land and on time and in the right spot. And so there's a lot to it for sure. But man, when you're doing Latin jazz, it's in that middle section, when everybody's soloing and exchanging solos and they're free. It's just that's the best. I love that. You get into a zone, you get into a groove, and it's a wrap after that.
So speaking of Latin jazz, one of my earliest memories of just I would say listening to a lot of Latin jazz. I had a friend in high school, and she was just into Latin jazz, and I think frankly she just liked Latin people. Period. She wasn't Latin
Okay.
at all, and she was like, "Jerry, have you listened to this music?" And back then, you listen to the R&B, hip hop, rap, and my mom listened to Love 94, but I wouldn't say
Okay.
there was I wasn't listening to much, Latin music, period, whether it be salsa, Afro-Cuban, or, Latin jazz. But I remember I heard this trumpet player, and I had never heard anyone play the trumpet like that, and it was Arturo Sandoval, and it was a recording of Night in Tunisia.
Mm.
I was totally blown away. It's got to be one of the iconic, and in my mind, I can't even remember where he recorded it. But from then on, I got a recording of and it was a compilation. Arturo Sandoval was on it, Tito Puente was on there, and I just started devouring this music. And I was like, oh my gosh, I didn't even know this existed. And so again, I would call myself more of a fusion guy. I grew up listening to Jaco Pastorius and
Nice.
all of the great bass players and what have you. But I'm curious, what are your influences? You're a percussionist, and you're a songwriter as well. So talk about your influences, into your musical style.
Um, that is kind of easy actually. Not many. Well, I guess I was gonna say not many people know, but actually it's out there. It's out there in my bio, things like that, so on and so forth. My dad was a percussionist. My dad uh, was a percussionist and uh, grew up playing Latin music. He played congas, bongos, and timbales. Um, I think some of his earliest recordings were in the '60s, in the Boogaloo era.
Mhm.
Um, a song called Meditation. And I can keep going and keep going, but my dad was definitely the number one influence on me. My dad taught me how to play when I was a kid. I've said this numerous times over. He used to tell us to sit down and play, and we had to play. But I wanted to go. I wanted to go play. With my friends. I wanted to be playing handball or baseball or something like that. Not playing percussion. I was like, no, that's not what I want to do. Um, and so that was, or that is, I should say, my biggest influence right there is my dad, first and foremost. Um, Later on, as time went on, you listen to more music and then you start to admire and get influenced by other musicians.
Mhm.
One of the biggest, influences, I should say, in music for me, as being of Puerto Rican descent, is a guy by the name of Hector Lavoe.
Mhm.
His voice, him, and Willie Colon and Johnny Pacheco, they were the sound of what is called the Fania era.
Mhm.
Um, and that those guys, they just put salsa on the map in a way that, it's what we know now, you know.
Yeah.
And in doing so, they helped, or they were able to, how do I, they were able to put musicians on the map and
Mm.
in the spotlight. One of those musicians who is a huge mentor, friend, um, and like a father figure, because my father has passed on. And I mentioned his name earlier, is Pablo Chino Nunez.
Yes, yes,
And amazing percussionist.
absolutely.
He's always teaching me, he's always mentoring me, and it's not just in music but in life, and that's huge. And so he has been a huge influence on me musically over the years. Um, Especially after a certain period in time where my dad passed away, things like that, so on and so forth. But definitely, as far as percussionists are concerned, those are probably two of the biggest influences in my life.
Yeah,
Um, I continue to work with Chino Nunez. You know
yes,
that.
yeah.
I think you saw him at our last event.
Mhm.
He'll be at my next event, things like that. So, he's just been amazing. He's been awesome. But it's those guys like that. And
Yeah.
that's on the salsa side. Chino Nunez does both salsa, Latin jazz, and
Mhm.
and's done a bunch of stuff. Um, But there is one gentleman on the Latin jazz side that I really really admire, and that is Poncho Sanchez, and
Yeah.
he's a
Mhm.
percussionist, and I love a lot of the work that Poncho has done, the way he plays, things like that.
Mhm.
Another one is Raul Rico,
Mhm.
um, another conguero that I really admire, who I had the opportunity to meet him before he passed away in 2009. And just so those are just a couple of the musicians that have influenced me as years have gone on.
And that's awesome. It actually reminds me of how important, even in the music genre in particular, just giving an opportunity, that mentoring aspect, giving an opportunity to young musicians, training them and continue to pass forward, that knowledge. I think, all the truly greats, they they were great in their own right, but they were able to transfer and give opportunity. I think about all the folks that played with people like Miles Davis. It's like if you
Hmm.
look at everyone that Miles Davis discovered and played with him, I mean, these guys are giants now. So I
Right,
always,
exactly. Like
yeah,
Charlie Rouse,
yeah,
sax player who played with Miles.
yeah. Keith
And
Jarrett was
Yeah,
another.
right. Exactly. So, I mentioned Charlie because you have that 6 degree of separation type thing.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
my dad actually played percussion for Charlie,
Oh
for Charlie
wow,
Rouse. And,
wow.
there's a picture out there and I have to find it, but there's a picture out there I have of him on stage playing congas, playing percussion for Charlie Rouse, doing some jazz in New York.
That's
And so, how crazy is that?
Yeah. So let's pivot. Talk about the origins of your band. So how did you even start? When did you start?
Uh, wow. All right. So, let's rewind real quick. Again, my dad taught me how to play when I was a kid,
Uh-huh.
like 6 years old, 7 years old, something like that. Um, that's how it started. Went to school later on for music, got a degree in engineering, sound recording, so on and so forth.
Mhm.
My dad passed away, um, ended up going to Boys Harbor,
Mhm.
where that's where some of the biggest and best musicians were
Mhm.
teaching. Chino Nunez, George Delgado, Johnny Amendra, guys like that who I was able to take and study under after my dad passed away. And so in New York City, I was playing percussion for a lot of other people, a gentleman by the name of Edwin Vasquez, um, and a whole bunch of other people, whoever needed a percussionist or conguero, whatever the case may be. Then ended up doing my thing with them, playing with them, decided I wanted to start my own band.
Mhm.
I made a phone call to a gentleman by the name of Louis Ayala, who was one of the singers for the original Saoko band.
Mm.
So, and that's where I got the name from, but that's a different
Ah,
story.
okay.
So, um, and I say, hey, I want to start my own band and I want you to sing. So
Mm.
he said, okay, let's do it. We got the musicians together. We got some of my dad's old musician friends, um, and formed the band. And that was how it started. It was called Cachi and Friends.
Mm.
Um, then I moved to South Florida, didn't know anybody, and didn't wasn't playing, so on and so forth, but I still had it in my head that I wanted to have my own band.
Mm.
Had to establish myself in the music community first, which is what I did as a percussionist,
Mhm.
and started getting gigs, so on and so forth. And then when I felt the time was right, when I had enough connections and I knew enough people, then I started my own band.
Mm.
That was where I said, okay, now what structure do I want?
Mhm.
Do I want one, and one, which I tried originally, one
Mhm.
trumpet, one trombone, one sax,
Mhm.
full percussion section, conga mugo timbales, piano bass, and two singers.
Mm.
That was the first structure,
Yeah.
and it was good, but that to me wasn't the sound I wanted. I
Mm.
wanted that full brass, that full sound. So then
Yeah.
I changed structure, and ended up having two, and one, two
Mm.
trumpets, two trombones, and a bari sax.
Mm,
So now when you hear my recordings, that's what you hear. And
gotcha.
that is the structure I've kind of stuck with. Again, full percussion section, congas, bongos, timbales, piano bass. Oh, and three singers instead of two.
Okay.
Just the harmonies were fuller and things like
Right.
that when you have three singers versus two singers.
Right.
Um, and then as time has gone on, I've stayed with the full 13-piece band.
Mhm.
However, there have, after the pandemic, things have gotten to the point where like, oh, we don't want the full band. So I was like, okay, not a problem. I understand. So I've had to downsize a little.
Right.
But the big band is where my heart is.
Yeah.
I do use a smaller band on occasion.
Mhm.
And surprisingly enough, it is three trombones. No
Gotcha.
trumpets, no sax,
And so
three trombones.
smaller, so large is 13, smaller is what?
Would be 10.
So 10.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Well, I can
Okay.
do 9, don't get me wrong. And I have. I have. I prefer not to, but I have. I always prefer the big band. Always prefer the big sound. And so that's just me. That's what I like. I love that big brass sound. That again, going back to what we spoke about earlier about salsa dura, that
Mhm.
punch in the face, that hit you in the face sound.
Yeah.
And feel, and that's what you get when you have a bigger band. You can get that with a small band. Don't get me wrong, but
Yeah, it's
it's
just different. And
it
I
is.
think yeah, when you're an innovative musician and you hear things and just as you described, you're trying to blend 2 genres and you know what you wanna hear.
Hmm.
It's hard for musicians when you don't hear what you want to hear. That's always a big time challenge, and so, I
For
guess
sure.
the musician, the true musician is always chasing something. It's always something that you have in your mind, and I know, when you're able to hear what you hear, it is just like something it does something to you. It's
It
just like
does.
it brings it people who are non-musicians, I know they may listen to the music, but it's different when you're a musician and you are part of that process and you actually hear. It's like it transports you to another dimension.
So I'm gonna be completely honest with you, and you're dead on. And for me, I guess because of the passion that I have for music, and all genres of music,
Mhm.
I listen to country.
Yeah.
I like Zach Brown. That's just you know, uh, I like country music. I like all genres of music. But if the song is done right, if
Mhm.
the song just feels right, there have been times, and I'm being honest, that I have gotten emotional,
Yeah.
that I feel it.
Yeah.
And even if it's a happy go lucky, up tempoed song, it just hits you. And I have gotten emotional over music that I've heard because it's just amazing.
Yeah.
It's country music. I just mentioned country music, and I mentioned Zach Brown, and there's a percussionist in the Zach Brown band. Just so
Mhm.
happens to be Daniel De Los Reyes, who I know and had the opportunity to meet and spend some time with in LA, also in 2009, actually. Um, and they play a song called "Chicken Fried."
Chicken fried.
It's such an amazing song. I love that song. It's on rotation on my playlist. And it's just one of those songs that I think is done so well.
Mhm.
That just the lyrics, there's a certain part about the whole military thing. I have a
Mhm.
daughter, military daughter, and
Yeah.
so it just hits home.
Yeah.
And there's something about that song that I just really, really love.
Yeah.
So even something like country music, if it's right, it is right, and you'll know it. It'll
Yeah.
hit you.
Hey, you're definitely the sign of a great musician. You don't there's no discrimination against style. It's just you want to hear something that's good and done well. So lastly, it is Hispanic Heritage Month, and you cannot live in South Florida and not appreciate the rich tapestry. I mean, it's interesting. I talk to many friends, many people that I meet with, and when I travel, I talk about just how wonderful it is to be a part of just the history of South Florida and what the Hispanic community has meant to South Florida. And I can tell you, man, I definitely appreciate it. And one of the things that I love, and I feel like you really bring this to your performances. And you're talking about getting emotional and the passion. But the one thing that I've always appreciated about your performances and the people that you bring out is it's like you guys are always having fun, and there's a community, there's family, there's warmth, there's a genuineness. And so again, I may be telling you more about what I think about Hispanic heritage, but man, what does it mean to you? What does Hispanic Heritage Month mean to you?
So, yeah, and that's a great question, and I don't think I've ever had anybody ask me that question. So you're the first.
All
Um,
right.
and so, in Hispanic Heritage Month to me isn't just about um, isn't just about um, celebrating your heritage or say, "Yay, I'm Hispanic," or "Yo soy Latino." Hey, it go to me. It goes deeper than that.
Mhm.
Um, to me, it is that opportunity to look at those Latinos, those Hispanics who have paved the way for
Mm,
others, such as myself in the music industry or
yeah.
even outside of the music industry, whether it be on the battlefield of the armed forces,
Mhm.
whether it be, civil service, whatever it is, it's more than just, celebrating your heritage of who you are and what country you came from.
Yeah.
For me, it's about honoring and embracing your culture, of course, um, but also those Latinos or those Hispanics who have um, helped to put um, our culture or our heritage in the forefront for people
Mhm.
to understand, embrace, and say, "Hey, guess what? This is what we've done. This is the mark that we've made in
Yeah.
society, in history. And, you know, we as Latinos, we're capable of doing that."
Yeah.
And so it definitely is more than just hey, yes. And don't get me wrong, I love being Puerto Rican. I'll tell you, some people tell me I know more about Puerto Rico than some other Puerto Ricans, but I love my culture. I love I love my people, so on and so forth, um and I love being Puerto Rican,
Yeah.
but it's more than that. It is definitely more than that. And we have to acknowledge those who help put Latinos and our culture on the map and out front.
Yeah. Well, hey, listen, I just want to tell you, I appreciate you. I appreciate who you are. I think you're a better man than you are a musician, and you're a really good musician.
Thank you. I
So,
appreciate that. Thank you.
yeah, just the love that you show to my family when we're out there. You've seen my boys and my kids and everybody kind of grow up, and so I consider you family, man. And
Thank you.
it's
Likewise.
yeah, and so I every time we get an opportunity to work together, I feel like I'm the other band member doing what I can.
So what's crazy is and I have children. I'm a family man. I have children. And with that being said, when I see your kids, I'm like, oh, those are like my nephew and my nieces now. We've worked so long together, and
Yeah.
so sometimes, I mess with them and I get on them just like I do my own nephew and nieces, and so they don't get treated any differently than I would my own family, my own nephew and nieces, and my kids, because of the admiration and the love that I have for you and your family, man. And so the feeling is definitely mutual. Um, um, I have to tell you that I was on tour in the Virgin Islands,
Mhm.
and this goes to you, the person and the engineer that you are, and the caliber of work that you present. Um, and we're setting up and we're doing sound check, and at the end of the gig, everybody was like, "Man, the sound was great." I'm like, "I know, he's almost as good as Jerry Nelson back in South Florida." And everybody's like, "Yeah, I agree. I agree." And I'm like, "I know." I'm like, It's so hard to find somebody who understands." And this guy, his name was Carl. Um, he was on point. And I'm like, "Man, I was like, it's like having Jerry all over again." I was like, "Oh my God." And everybody was like, "Yeah, you're right."
Yeah.
And it's funny when somebody says, "Okay, you need to provide a PA, or where can I get a PA?" I was like, "Look, if you're gonna get anybody, gotta be Jerry Nelson. That's it. I'll give you his number. You gotta call him. There's nobody else. I don't want anybody else. I don't want to hear anybody else. That's the only one I want. It's him. That's it." And so I constantly push you to be the sound engineer, and to do the sound, because you have done an amazing job over the years, and I look forward to the years to come. um,
Absolutely.
and if God willing, and I'm playing, 70, $80,000, I mean 80 thousand fan arenas, I'm like, I'm taking Jerry Nelson with me.
Let's go. Let's
That's
go.
it. I'm taking the Nelson family with me. That's it. They're doing everything. Don't ask for anything else. It's in my contract. Just understand that.
Well, I
So
appreciate you, Kachi, man. And hey, looking forward to your performance October 20th, 4 p.m., Charles F. Dodge City Center, Cachi y Soaco Nuevo. Did I get it right?
you did not.
All right. I'm gonna
Okay.
practice.
Okay. Let's practice it.
Yeah.
Cachi
Cachi
y
y
Saoko
Saoco.
Saoko
Saoco
Nuevo.
Nuevo. All
That's
right.
it. You
Cachi
got it.
Saoco Nuevo.
That's
All
it.
right.
You good.
All right, here we go. October 20th, Charles F. Dodge City Center, 4 p.m. Don't miss out on this amazing performance. Appreciate you, Kachi.
Likewise, brother. Be well. God bless. Talk to you soon, brother.
All right.